All right, welcome to another episode of the Better Realtor. We are with the Better Group here in Middle Tennessee. My name is Preston Earnest. I'm one of the realtors.
I'm Scott Moeller.
And I'm Nadia Earnest.
And we come here every week to meet with you. And we love talking about the business that we do, but we love making what we do accessible for everyone. So whether you are a client or you are a real estate professional yourself, you're welcome. Today we're going to be talking about networking.
Dun, dun, dun.
The big N. This can trip up a lot of people.
How so?
So networking, I think, is vital to the business that we do and that we're in. And networking, you can err to the side of being like a sleazeball or using people, and that's just not how we see it here at Better Group. And
is that how you feel about networking?
I definitely know because we came from Hollywood.
Yeah.
So yeah, the world of networking
You guys are slimy.
in Hollywood is this.
Easy.
Hey, good to meet you. Are you working on anything? No. Okay, next. Hey, good to meet you. You working on? Oh, can I be in your project?
Yeah.
That's it. And it's not a great feeling.
It's I feel like with networking, it's interesting, and I'm excited to dig into some of this. But I always go, okay, what's the fine line between being opportunistic in a way that is selfish and what is genuine networking opportunities? Because
for win-wins
for everybody. And I think it's a constant, like, what is your motivation? But also it's part of the job, but also you don't want to be gross about it. Right. But also, yeah. How do you do that? How do you not be gross about it?
That's a great thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the first point that you had kind of pointed out whenever you're prepping for the episode is you cultivate genuine relationships. And it's like, it's kind of that simple, like be a friend.
What are the cues, though, for like a slimer?
I think the cues are if all of your conversations are exclusive to the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm Preston. I'm a realtor. Good to meet you. Are you looking to buy or sell right now? No. Okay. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty big cue. What do you think, babe?
I feel like that's like my LinkedIn DMs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
totally.
that you're receiving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Facebook sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, hi, Scott. I'm so glad you added me as a friend. So
yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why
Are you really? Are you really glad?
Yeah. Should I be this happy?
Man, I don't know. I feel like this is something that I've always kind of struggled with, especially coming from LA and being actors and being in Hollywood, because I do think that you can't be under a rock and you can't not put yourself out there, because especially if the work that you're doing is providing a service where it's a relational business.
Well, we're also Christians.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing.
Exactly.
And it's like, man, I think about it. It's like, okay, as Christians and believers, like, how do we go? Man, is the first question you go, how can I be friends with this person because eventually they're going to be a deal? Or is it, hey, I want to be friends with this person because I want to know their story and know what they're about?
Right.
Both.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think.
You want to sell real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like that's why it's important to be the best version of yourself. Right. So if you're going to be a realtor, you should have some sort of self-development. You should have some mentors, coaches.
Yeah.
Right? Get better. Be the best. So they do hire you and they do use you, and you can provide them an excellent service. You can be honest, right? There's value and benefits to those people.
Right.
So, you're doing them a service.
And I think it goes back to, if you've ever been in the sales industry and outside of real estate, it's really easy to sell a good product. It's really difficult to sell a product you don't believe in.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, and you can't really fake believing in yourself. We talked last episode about confidence comes from doing work and proving to yourself that you are ready. And when I think about networking, it's like, and you're mentioning being a better version of yourself, is if you truly believe that what you would bring to someone would make their lives better, it would be, you would heal the headache. You would, be able to bring some financial success to their life because of your skill set. Then it's a lot easier to present yourself as a friend and an ally at that point.
I agree. And so get out of that mindset of networking is slimy.
Right.
Because if
For
you're,
sure.
if
Don't
you're,
be slimy. Networking isn't slimy. Just don't be slimy.
Yes.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't be slimy. Exactly.
And if you're a believer, you should have some excellent people skills.
Absolutely.
And
or be working on them.
Yeah. And if you're in sales, the same. So some big tips for networking
Yep.
are communicating, learning how to communicate. Communication is everything. We're professional communicators and we are professional networkers, right? So I like to come up with questions. Everyone should come up with like 3 to 5 really good questions to learn to ask people.
Right.
And that are intentional.
Right.
And
we would call them in Apple training, we would call them open-ended questions.
Yeah,
questions that lead to more information.
100%. Yeah. Open-ended questions for sure. But also not like, what do you do for work?
Totally.
And,
oh gosh,
when did you move here? And
you're looking to move soon.
Yeah. Try to figure out some really good questions. And then, and then questions that lead to other questions that you're able to ask.
Right.
Because people love to share. People want to talk. And so people don't want you to walk up to them and just start blabbing all about your life. Right?
For sure.
Get to know them. And so come up with 3 to 5 really good questions that you think would help you get to know somebody and like who they really are, not what they do, not how many kids they have, like really who they are, how they treat their family, how they husband, how they wife, how they parent, what they're working on, who they want to be. You know what a really good question is? Who do you want to be 5 years from today?
Right.
That's a really good question.
I'm hearing this question, and one of the things that comes to my mind is I feel like part of networking, and there's different aspects of networking, which we'll also talk about, like events and actually being intentional about where you're going. That's like more related to work. But on the day-to-day, it's really the word that comes to mind is cultivating relationships, cultivating friendships. It's you talked about in the last episode, Scott, about we get your birthday card down, or your birthday down, so that we can send your birthday card every year. I think it's really those little things that I think set people apart, like genuinely. Like we're part of a Christian healthcare ministry, and honestly, what I love about it most is that people, when they send shares in, they'll literally send you a prayer for it's so that aside, I think there's something to be said that you're not just zoom, but to actually take the time, even as Christians, to go, man, like, how can I be praying for this person? Or how can I pour into this person? Or, oh man, this person lost their mom and we're going to go bring them like a dinner or like some sourdough or whatever. But that's part of networking.
Right.
And if you just break it down intellectually, it's like you think, what makes up a friend? Anybody can sit with you when you're having your best day. But what makes up a friend is someone that will sit with you when it's hard to do that. And so in my life, the people that I'm most drawn to, the people that I'm most interested in are the most interested people. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody and maybe it's an exciting story to you and you're sharing it and it's just falling flat because they're like, cool, but then you tell someone else and they're like, no way, tell me more. But genuinely, they really are interested in hearing that story because they're interested in you. You're more likely to be drawn to that person. So if you are someone out there and you're looking to work on your networking skills, based on what Nadia was saying about cultivating relationships, a way to cultivate it genuinely is to be interested. Like be actually excited to hear their story.
Ask good questions that aren't just, where do you work?
Yes.
Or whatever, like Scott was saying.
And so what would you be interested in? Think about what you'd be interested in somebody else.
Yeah.
Or discovering about somebody else.
Totally.
And then think about what kind of questions those would develop.
Have you guys read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence Others, or something like that?
No.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, so that's a really great book, listeners. So it was circled a lot in the entertainment industry, and honestly, I think it could be in any that you're having to do networking, because really the goal is, how do you win friends and how do you influence? Part of networking is you're influencing somebody to use your service. You're influencing somebody to go, okay, man, that guy's cool, man. I want to hire him to be my agent. Like, we were shooting something, the four of us with Caitlin, and one of your clients called you to talk about his life stuff. And it's like, you clearly cultivated a relationship with somebody post. Maybe you sold their house a couple of years ago and now maybe they're going through something hard, that they're calling you, their realtor. And that's pretty impressive to kind of go like, hey, like, we're not just going to sell your home, but you're going to go the extra mile.
Right.
Yes. And that's the cool thing about being in real estate and being a believer.
Right.
Is you meet so many different people and you get to provide a service.
Yeah. And serve them.
And serve them. You really can. I know it sounds cliche, but you really have the opportunity to do that. So it's an awesome career for sure.
And talking about win-wins, that, if you're ever going through depression out there, one of the things that they'll tell you to do is look for a way to serve someone else, and it will help you get out of your own head. And so not only is it exciting to do, but also it quite literally will help you focusing on other people.
Yeah. So another tip would be to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So you have to put yourself into a position of influence, like you're saying, like,
right.
Okay, what can I bring to the table? Should I start hosting events? If I go to an event, who am I going to be? I think a great question to ask is when you leave a conversation or a party or an event, what are the 3 things that people are going to think about you?
Right.
And you can be intentional about this. You can create who you want to be.
Absolutely.
And so come up with 3 things that you want people to remember you by. Right. Start practicing this. Go have a conversation at the next party or event or whatever that you go to, and be intentional about, what, I want these. I'm going to walk up to this group of people. I'm going to ask some great questions, and I'm going to, my body language, how I look them in the eye, the questions I ask, the comments when I decide to speak, when not to speak.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to put off. And I want them to, think that I'm honest, that I'm educated and intellectual. Right.
Right.
I'm hearing what you're saying. And I think that one of the things and oddly another word that came to my mind was authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that, in a sea of agents, or if you're at a networking event that's a party for agents or brokers, and you're there and you're mingling, I would imagine, and you can tell me because I've never been in that world in that sense, in those particular networking environments. I've been in my own type of networking environments, and I always found that there is this kind of like scent of like people trying to be like everybody else, or everybody's trying to be the same. And it's like, there's nothing that's going to trump or set somebody apart than your authentic. So you're talking about, okay, what do I want people to remember me by? Well, what does Scott Moeller love to do? Fish.
Yeah.
He loves his family. He loves Jesus.
Yeah.
You love hunting. That would maybe be different than what Preston would love, or that what Caitlin would bring to the table.
Yes.
And so I think it's really working on yourself to go, I want to be authentic. Mm-hmm. I want to be of influence. And I don't want to be like, it's easy on social media. I do a lot of the social media for the Better Group, and I follow a lot of these real estate agents, and it's like they all kind of start looking the same after a while. And
yeah, baby.
And it's just funny, but it's like, how do you do what you do and be authentic while you're networking so you do stand out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come up with really good questions to ask people. Think about it. Sit down and think about it. It'll come to you, and then come up with 3 things that you want people to remember you by when you leave a conversation. And we had a conversation, I think it was my second time talking to Scott at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And he was saying some interesting things. He's from California, but his parents or grandparents moved from Tennessee to the Santa Monica area. And I'm listening to him talk, and I'm just like, I could have easily said, "Oh, I'm from California too." What part of California do you come from? I'm from Auburn. It's like, but I was like, wow. I was thinking, how cool is it that his grandparents moved from Tennessee in the, 60s or whatever to Southern California, or it was probably in the 50s.
Yeah.
What a time. I was thinking, and I looked at him and said, what a time, to move from the South to Southern California,
Yeah.
the dream, because that was the dream in the 50s,
Back
60s.
then.
Yeah. And I said, what made them move from the South to Southern California? And what was it like growing up? You know, he was born in 66. What was it like growing up in the 60s and 70s in Southern California? Because there was, you know, a hippie movement, there's music, there's, you know, LA was different. Hollywood was different.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You could ride your bike across
The
town.
valley. Yeah. The valley still had orange groves.
Orange groves, farms. And so
Now it's just all people in houses.
we spoke for 35 minutes in the coffee line. We just froze there, you know, talking about why his grandparents and parents moved and how he moved back here and in 2006 and what it was like riding a bike, you know, in the early 70s and in Santa Monica, and what a good time to buy property out there also.
Right.
You know, so I got to know who he was, who his parents were, who his grandparents were, his roots here, you know, his roots in Southern California, where, you know, Southern California and California went, right? The direction they went, and then wanting to get back to kind of that lifestyle, right? Where it's slower, it's safer, schools are better, right? And
that's such an important, and it turned into a wonderful time together. And that's such an important part of networking that leads us to our next point of listening, like truly listening to what people are saying. You know, if you're struggle with that, maybe if you're having a conversation with someone and there's an internal dialogue of, oh, here's what I want to say next. You can get rid of that. There's a tool. It's called improv comedy. You can go and take improv classes. We got a great one.
It's called the Oddity Improv. Here's a plug. The Oddity Improv. We got Kelsey
Owned
Cook
by the
and
Better
Chris
Group.
Guerra.
Oh, yeah.
No, maybe we'll partner up one day in some way, but they're in Franklin, Tennessee. Anyways, yes.
Right. You can take classes, and the biggest part of the foundational part of improv is listening. Really taking what someone is saying and applying your questions to what they're saying.
because it will change.
It will change, and you need to be ready for that. Yeah. You know, that's such a great point. And networking encompasses a lot of different things, but it all comes down to being intentional. What are some ways people can be intentional about networking, putting themselves out there?
Well, I want to tag on to what you just said.
Yeah, sure.
Is when you are listening and you're able to ask great questions from listening and you're enjoying it, right? You're being authentic. You're also building, this person's starting to like you. There's like hits of dopamine, you know, coming from the brain, like, oh, another question about me. Like, oh, well, this is, you know, and then they're like, I like this person. So a huge part of networking is becoming likable. Right. And then that's part of the influence. And so you got to be able to work a room. And then all of a sudden you're becoming this valuable, rare thing. You're like, who is that? I like that person. And I don't know anything about him. And sometimes that's a really good thing because you're just spouting off when you first meet somebody. Right. And you're like, and they're just like, oh, I didn't like that, you know? And so you become more valuable the more you learn to listen and inquire and hold reserve to who you are, because sooner or later they'll inquire. They'll become interested, and then you'll be heard, and then they'll listen, and then the connection begins. Right.
One of the things that I loved, and one of the notes that you made here was make sure networking aligns, which it's under the shape your image, but make sure networking aligns with your interest so it's enjoyable, not just work. And I think that goes back to being authentic, and it's going, okay, you know, I think of different agents, and everybody networks differently, right? So you might have somebody who loves fishing or golf, and they're going to shine on the golf. I was going to say golf court, but that's not what it is. Golf course. You know, I know I have other friends that are really big real estate agents that are big into hockey, and it's like that's where they like love being. So they'll invite like 2 dudes or just a client or somebody that's a potential friend to go, hey dude, I got an extra ticket to this hockey game. Do you want to come?
Yeah.
Or, you're in those booths and you're able to talk to people. It really should be something, I would imagine, that is filling into your bank that you enjoy. It doesn't mean that you don't stretch yourself and maybe put yourself out there in different ways, but really it should feel like one of the things that you said, it's enjoyable and it doesn't feel like too much work.
And the best part about that is when you're doing something that you enjoy, you're around people that also enjoy what you enjoy. Networking, it ceases to be work and it's fun. You are making friends. You're doing something you like together. It's a cool thing.
I know Caitlin would share about a sisterhood that she was doing back in California, and it was really opening up her home and opening up her space to allow women to come in and network. And maybe some of them were real estate agents and maybe some of them weren't, but that's a way to network. Like you never know who you're going to bless and who's going to become a potential client or who's just going to be a friend, and maybe that friend knows somebody that's moving here.
Right.
So it's really casting out the net wide with being intentional and whatever brings you joy and you're good at.
Yeah, intentional is key because proximity is power. You'll become who you're hanging around all the time. It's true. I used to hate that saying because I was so optimistic about helping others fulfill their potential. But that's a very, it's not a very rewarding hope that I carried, because people don't most of the time people don't want to carry out their potential.
Right.
And so I'm like,
and then you get stuck wanting it more than they do.
Yes.
And then it's just
it's
constant.
not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was in their shoes at one point and I found myself, I was like, oh man, I'm talking to myself. I'm seeing myself in these guys and I'm trying to help them out because I wanted some help at that time.
Yeah.
And I didn't get any, and that's what helped me create who I am today. So the struggles is good.
Right.
But I started thinking about, what if I'm around people who are already successful,
Right.
And maybe if I should start listening to that saying proximity is power, and I should start hanging out in rooms where, people have an influence and they communicate better than me and they think better than me.
Right.
And so that's what I started to do. And that room is fun. Yeah. You're just filled with life. You're motivated.
Right.
Right. And you have resources and you make friends and everybody's winning and they want everyone to win. And so it's kind of like, hey, you run a mile, I'll run a mile.
Yeah.
You know what's cool too, though? I think when I think of networking, we've spent a lot of time talking about clients and relationships, but it's like when you're networking, it's like vendors. You're networking with vendors. You're also building your Rolodex for people that you can call. Like you got a really cool dude at church who does really great handyman work. It's like, shout out to him. It's like, now we have that. We're networking in that capacity. It's really, everything is a networking opportunity in the sense of like, it might not be a direct client, but then that person's services might also benefit your client. So our brother-in-law, Primo Painting, shout out to them too. They have an amazing painting company, and it's like, we're pulling from our networking resources to better service our clients so they can have a better experience.
Dude, so good. Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just...
And another thing that we see a lot in the industry that we want to change here at Better Group is infighting and jealousy between agents. It's like the moment that we can start looking at our fellow agents as our fellow agents and we want them to win and be successful and be the best versions of themselves, the more opportunity comes to us all.
Well, that could only happen if everybody's with EXP.
Yeah, that's right.
And then that's a no-brainer.
That's right. Yeah, shout out EXP.
But here, if you want to write down anything, it's these 6 networking tips, okay, that we created before this show here.
Love it.
Number 1 is cultivating genuine relationships, and we touched on that,
Yep.
what that looks like. Number 2, embrace growth through discomfort. Learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Very important.
Put yourself in situations, speaking engagements, host events If you're not there at that point yet, then start going to these events and walk up to a group of people and do your practice before the event. Okay, here's how I want to be remembered. Here's 3 words that I want to be remembered by when I leave this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And then learning how to network, which is what we're discussing. So if you don't know how to do that, start going to events, ask yourself these questions, come up with really good questions to ask.
Yeah. If you're uncomfortable talking, take a communications class, take an improv class, do something that's going to help you communicate better.
Yeah. How many times you've been you meet somebody and you got nothing to say and you guys are kind of just looking at each other.
Exactly.
How do you exit that conversation? And are they going to say something? Do I say something?
My favorite thing in those situations is to lean in. We'll talk about that after we go through the list, though, where I'm for.
Yeah. Ask better questions, right? Mm-hmm. Number 5 is shape your image. What do you want to look like? Yeah. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? Who do you want to be remembered as?
What do you want to be known for? Yeah.
Right.
What rooms do you want to be in?
You're going to die soon, right? What's going to be on your headstone? Who's going to read your googly? Right? So somebody is it going to be short? Is it going to be long? My grandfather was an awesome man. Hundreds of people showed up, but he had to have his funeral at a park. And he was an awesome coach at the high school and math teacher at the high school. And I'm like, man, it was just so cool to see hundreds of people show up.
And people that he probably affected their life that
I still get contacted today. People, awesome. Who are 50, 60 years old, and they're like, your grandfather, left such a huge impact on me. And that's an influence. And he's been dead since 2010, and people are still reaching out, talking about him.
Amazing.
So shape your image, right? Number 6 is explore different networking opportunities. Yeah. So figure out what's going on around town and get dressed and get out and
get there,
right?
And if you're really embracing growth through discomfort, number 2, that part's going to be a lot easier because it's a scary thing putting yourself out there. But if you are embracing the fact that you're trying to make yourself better, you're building up your skill set, this is really the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Just put yourself out there in the world.
Yeah. And my motivation is I wanted to be articulate and a better speaker and communicator. Yeah. I wanted to be effective.
Right.
I've always been a pretty good communicator, but then it's like, well, I want to increase how effective I am when I communicate, And I used to communicate when I was younger. I was short and I was like, hey, you should just believe me. Like, I know the way to go. Let's go. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. Trust me, and that's scary for half of the population.
Right.
Right. They're like, I like you and I want to, but I can't right now. Right.
I'm not sure.
Right. And then the other half of people were like, well, this is great. Let's go. Scott's the best, And so I was like, well, I need to reach that other half.
Yeah.
I need to make myself, less, of a risk. Yeah. Right. And it's just a perception. I'm just explaining it to them how they're able to understand it and map it out in their brain. Right. And so if I'm a leader and I'm in a leadership position as a Christian and as a man and as a business owner and I want to be in a position of influence, then you have to be effective in your communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. And as we're winding down this episode, I promised I hinted at a little pro tip of leaning in. If you find yourself at a party or a networking event, trust me, everyone is trying to find the person to talk to or the conversation to be a part of or the group that's having the most laughs. If you have somebody that comes up to you, and we've all been there, and maybe you've even been this person, so this is no judgment on this person, but if you had someone approaching you and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a drain just talking to them, trying to get anything out of them, and you find yourself trying to dodge or whatever, or find a different group, I'm going to encourage you to lean into that conversation, because if people are naturally drawn to you, it's a gift. And sometimes those people are trying just as hard. So if you're coming up with great questions like we talked about, and you turn the focus on, you know what, you're talking to me, I'm all in. I'm not worried about what's happening to my left and right. Let's talk. Tell me more about your life. and you get into a real conversation, it will attract other people to that conversation. It happens every time. Lean into the person who's saying hello to you. Look them in the eye. If they're the annoying person, roll up your sleeves. Be like, here we go. We're going to work on this. We're going to get through this weird, uncomfortable, difficult conversation. And I'm going to be truly interested. And you will notice how people just want to be around people who are having conversations, and everyone's trying to figure out how to.
That's true. I used to get annoyed by people that would approach me in the grocery store or just in public, and they're like overly excited to see you, but they would leave you like, feeling good.
Right.
You're like, what's that? Why is that person so happy? I used to get upset. Like, what are they selling me? Like, what do you just
You're like,
being nice for free?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. But those people started to inspire me, and then I would start to engage with them. And I'm like, oh, they're just walking up and asking great questions, and they're genuinely excited just to speak to people, and maybe they're seeing something in me that I don't see, and maybe they're trying to preach the gospel to me or something, and
maybe they're not sure, and they're like, hey, you're a Christian too, great.
Yeah.
Or maybe they worked themselves up in a mirror right before they left the house, and they're like, I'm going to talk to somebody today and make it meaningful.
Yeah,
you never know.
Notice those people out in public and speak to them, emulate what they do, and it will go a long way. And then another thing is, if you're in a room, we'll tend to go to we'll look for people that are comfortable. Like, oh, I know, I got to rush over there before that person's looking at me before they come over here, and so it's the best way is to be authentic, like you're saying. So what does that look like when you don't have these skills yet?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm just walk up to them, or if they walk up to you, just say, I'm really working on my social skills and my communication skills right now. And it's a little overwhelming to be in this room full of people, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
And I just want to get to know people, Be
honest.
Love
yeah. And
be
just,
okay.
And so, cause you're telling them what brought you here.
Exactly.
And you're saying, so that's what brought me here. And I'm really trying to work on, I want to be this person in the next 5 years.
Right.
That's what I'm working on right now. And literally today's day one.
Yeah.
And this is my first event.
Congratulations.
What a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it kind of lets down walls. And
Absolutely.
then who knows where that person goes with that. They may open up. They may be doing the same thing.
Hey, I don't want to be here either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. And they're like, well, I was staring at you. I didn't know if I should come talk to you. And then it's just the conversation should sail from there.
Right.
Right. And then that's a wonderful time to practice those questions that we were talking about.
Absolutely.
And then one more thing is to practice in public. Right. This goes along with negotiating, which we were talking about last episode, and your networking skills. But when you're like in a drive-through, or you're standing, at the farmer's market, or you're buying something, ask for something for free.
I was just going to say, are you going to try to hustle a Chick-fil-A sandwich or Chick-fil-A? Be like, hey.
Just order and then roll up to the window or the line, wherever you're at, and just say, you know what? Can I get an extra
ice cream
fry?
for my kid?
Can I get an ice cream?
Yep.
Yeah. Like, I don't have any more money, but can I get an ice cream?
Hey, what do they
see where
say?
it goes.
What is that?
You miss 100%
you miss
of the
100%
shots
you don't take.
Yes.
Hey.
And with that, in the interest of being authentic, I do got to go. We got a heart out. I got to go pick up my kids. But thank you for joining us this week on the Better Realtor Podcast. We hope you gained something. We look forward to hearing about your stories, about how you put yourself out there and what came from it. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. You know the drill.